6 races into the new season, and the gap between the two Mercedes drivers is 68 points. 68. Same car, same garage, and one of those drivers is a teenager in only his second year in Formula 1. At Monaco, it turns brutal. George Russell does not just get beaten by Kimi Antonelli, he gets lapped by him on the narrowest, tightest circuit in the world. And the question nobody inside Mercedes wanted to say out loud is getting much harder to ignore. Is George Russell the problem? Rewind to March. Russell is standing on the top step in Australia, having just led a Mercedes 1-2 in the opening race of the year. He looks like the man who is finally going to carry this team back to the front. Antonelli, the teenager in the other car, is the long-term project, the name for the future. That is the picture in the spring sunshine of Melbourne. The picture at Monaco is a driver pulling his silver car into the 12th place board, a full lap behind the winner, beaten by that future before the future was even supposed to arrive. So, how do we get from one to the other? Because the answer is not the one the headline gives you. To understand what happened in the Principality, you have to take it apart slowly, piece by piece, because almost nothing about Russell's race was what it looked like from the outside. Start with Saturday. Russell qualifies 6th around the streets of Monaco.
Trapped 10, got Kimi at 1.6 seconds.
Antonelli puts the other Mercedes on pole, roughly 0.4 of a second quicker. 0.4 is a real gap, but it is not a chasm, and around here it does not matter as much as usual, because Monaco is the one weekend where starting position is almost everything. Track position is gold. Overtaking is close to impossible. A clean race from 6th should mean points, maybe more if the cars ahead stumble. And early on, the cars ahead do stumble. Max Verstappen, a surprise on the front row, stalls on the grid as the lights go out. His engine simply drops dead beneath him, and the field has to weave around a motionless Red Bull on the run to the first corner. Verstappen is out before the first lap is even complete. That alone should be a gift to everyone behind him. But this is where the first real problem finds Russell, and it has nothing to do with his own pace. He gets stuck. Directly ahead of him is Ishaq Hadjar in a wounded Red Bull, a car nursing tyre graining and an engine that is not behaving. Hadjar is slow, but he is slow in a place where Russell physically cannot get past. Lap after lap, Russell sits in his mirrors, unable to do anything but watch the leaders disappear up the road. By the time the picture clears, he has lost more than 30 seconds to the front of the field. 30 seconds at Monaco, when you have done nothing wrong, just sitting behind a struggling car you cannot overtake. Think about that for a second. The race is barely a third old, and Russell is already bleeding time he will never get back, purely because of where he is on the road. So Mercedes makes a call. They pit him early, on lap 31, trying to use fresh tyres to jump Hadjar in the pit stops, the undercut, the one weapon that still works on this circuit. And in clean air, it should work. Except Russell does not get clean air. When he rejoins, he finds himself behind Lando Norris, and Norris is not racing him in the normal sense. Norris is deliberately driving slowly, backing Russell up into the cars behind, doing it on purpose to protect his McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri further down the road. It is a smart, cynical team move, and Russell is the one paying for it. He is once again trapped, losing time, this time as a pawn in somebody else's strategy. Norris will eventually retire with a power unit problem of his own, but by the time he does, the damage is done. Russell is now more than a minute behind the leader. A minute. Hold on to that number, because it is the seed of everything that follows. If the story stopped here, it would just be a frustrating, unlucky afternoon. A driver caught in traffic he could not control. On a day the dominoes fell against him. That happens. That is Monaco. But the story does not stop here. This is the part that still does not quite make sense. And it is the part that turns a bad day into a disaster. Because while Russell is fighting all of this on track, the stewards are quietly building a case against him. The first blow lands as a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. On its own, a 5-second penalty is survivable. Annoying, but survivable. The strange part is how it happened. Russell is one of 6 different drivers handed a pit lane speeding penalty in this single race. 6, in one Grand Prix. And when the FIA actually looks at the data, every single one of those infringements is less than 1 km/h over the limit. Russell's, like several others, is over by about 1/10 of a km/h. 1/10. The explanation is almost absurd. The drivers were not really speeding. They were cutting the line at the pit entry slightly, clipping the geometry of the corner in a way the timing system reads as crossing the speed threshold a fraction early. A technicality applied to half a dozen drivers at once. So now Russell has a 5-second penalty to serve, on top of everything else. Fine, he still has the pace to absorb it. He is still, on corrected time, running for a podium. A net 3rd place is still sitting there waiting for him. And then the second blow lands, the one that ends it. People watching at home thought they understood Russell's race at this point. A penalty, some bad luck, but recoverable. They did not have the full picture. Here is what happens at his next stop. Under a safety car, Russell pits to serve the 5-second penalty and take fresh tyres. The rule is simple. The car must sit untouched for 5 seconds before the mechanics can work on it. But the Mercedes crew starts working on the car too early, before those 5 seconds have elapsed. And serving a time penalty incorrectly carries a much heavier punishment. A drive-through. A drive-through penalty at Monaco is close to a death sentence for your race. You have to peel off into the pit lane, drive its entire length at the reduced limit, and rejoin, losing the better part of half a minute, with no way to make it back on a circuit where you cannot pass. That single error takes Russell from a net 3rd place, a genuine podium, and drops him toward the very back of the order. In the space of one botched pit stop, the entire afternoon is gone. And here is the detail that everyone missed in the moment. Russell did nothing wrong in that pit box. The mistake was not his. Afterward, the team tells him there was a software issue, that there was confusion on the pit wall about the timing, that they simply did not hold the car for the 5 seconds the way they were supposed to. You would think someone on a championship-winning operation would have flagged it before it cost a podium. Nobody did. That is the difference between the headline and the truth. The headline says Russell got lapped. The truth is that his own team, not his driving, is what put him a lap down. Before we go further into the wreckage of this race, a quick word. If you follow Formula 1 the way I think you do, looking past the highlights reel to what actually happened and why, then consider subscribing. This channel breaks down the real story behind the results every single week. Now, let us pull back and look at the bigger picture, because the lap itself tells you everything about how far gone this race already was. Step back from Russell for a moment and look at the front of the race, because the context is what makes the lapping possible in the first place. Antonelli is not just leading, he is annihilating the field. From pole, the 19-year-old controls every phase of the race, builds a lead of more than half a minute, and by the closing stages he has lapped almost everyone up to the car running 3rd. Only 3 drivers remain on the lead lap at all. This is total dominance, the kind Monaco almost never produces. So when Russell, dragged backward by traffic and 2 penalties, finally meets the leader on the road, it happens on lap 58. Antonelli arrives in his mirrors, the same silver car, the same colours, and sweeps past to put his own teammate a full lap down. It is worth being precise about what that image actually means, because it is not a measure of Russell's raw speed. A driver who qualified 4/10 off pole does not get lapped by pace alone, not even at Monaco. He gets lapped because he lost 30 seconds behind Hadjar, lost more behind Norris, served a drive-through, and met a car having one of the great dominant days of the modern era. Every one of those things had to happen at once, and they did. When the flag falls, Russell is classified 12th, around 43 seconds behind the win, with 0 points. It is the 2nd race in a row he has come away empty-handed. 2 weekends, 40 points he should have scored, simply gone. His own assessment afterward is bleak. He says he is beyond frustration, that he is struggling to comprehend what is going on. He points out that he did nothing wrong in the pit lane, that the punishment did not fit the crime, and that he went from 3rd place to nothing. It is the sound of a driver who cannot understand why the universe keeps choosing him. And up at the front, the contrast could not be sharper. Antonelli takes the win, his 5th in a row. At 19 years old, he becomes the youngest winner in the history of the Monaco Grand Prix, breaking a record that had stood since Lewis Hamilton first won here years ago. He does it with a grand calam, pole position, victory, every single lap led, and the fastest lap of the race. A perfect weekend by a teenager, while his vastly more experienced teammate is being lapped behind him. Now, this is where the easy story would end. Bad luck, a team error, move on. But if you look only at Monaco, you miss the thing that actually matters. Because this race is not an outlier. It is the loudest example of a pattern that has been building all season. This was never just about one afternoon in the Principality. It is about 6 races, and a gap that keeps growing. Go back through the year and the misfortune is real, not imagined. In Canada, Russell is leading the race outright when his power unit fails on lap 30 and ends his afternoon. In Japan, the safety car falls at exactly the wrong moment for him and gut the strategy. Time after time, the result has gone against him. If even 2 of those weekends break the other way, this is a completely different season and a completely different conversation. But here is the uncomfortable part. The detail that explains more than the bad luck does. When you look at the head-to-head between the 2 Mercedes drivers across the season, Antonelli is consistently ahead on raw race pace, and Russell himself has started to point at why. He has talked openly about the difference in driving style between the 2 of them. His own style is smooth, precise, the clean and controlled approach that has defined him for years. Antonelli's is more aggressive, and this particular car, this year's Mercedes, seems to wake its tyres up in a way that rewards the aggressive style and punishes the smooth one, especially at low-energy circuits like Monaco, where getting the tyres into the right window is everything. The very thing that made Russell elite, that buttery smoothness, may be the thing working against him in this specific machine. That decision about the car's character seemed like a small technical detail at the start of the year. It was not. It is quietly reshaping which driver looks like the star and which looks like the problem. And the most honest thing Russell has said all season is also the most haunting. He cannot explain why, if it is purely about driving style, he was so strong at the very start of the year and has fallen away since. Which brings us to the question the headline really wants you to ask. Is George Russell's seat in danger? And here the truth is far less dramatic than the speculation. Russell signed a new Mercedes deal late last year. It is a 1+1 arrangement, one guaranteed season with a clause for a second. He has said openly that the clause is tied to his own performance, linked to this year's championship, which means his seat for the following year is, in his words, in his own hands. This is not a driver clinging to a contract that is about to expire. This is a driver who holds the trigger himself, provided he performs. And the man who makes the final call is not running from him. After Monaco, Toto Wolff does not throw Russell under the bus. He does the opposite. He takes the blame onto the team, admits the confusion on the pit wall, admits they did not hold the car the way they should have, and talks about picking his driver back up for the next race. That is not the language of a boss preparing to make a change. That is a team principal protecting his man. So, where does the seat panic come from? It comes from one name circling the paddock: Max Verstappen. There is genuine speculation that Verstappen could become available for the following season, that there may be a window for him to leave his current team, and that Mercedes would be first in line. If that ever became real, then yes, someone would have to make way. But that is speculation, not fact. There is no confirmed deal, no announcement, nothing concrete. It is a storyline, not a signing. And treating it as if Russell is already being measured for the exit is exactly the kind of leap the evidence does not support. So strip it all back. What actually happened to George Russell at Monaco? He qualified solidly, got buried in traffic he could not escape, absorbed a penalty that barely made sense, and was then finished off by a mistake his own team made in the pit box. He was not lapped because he is slow. He was lapped because everything that could go wrong did. On the same day, his teammate drove one of the races of his young life. But none of that changes the number on the board. 68 points. That gap is real. However unfairly some of it was built. And a season is not judged by whose fault each individual disaster was. It is judged by where you stand at the end. The real question is not whether Russell is fast enough, because he clearly is. The real question is whether a driver can keep insisting the results are lying about him, while the gap to the other side of his own garage keeps getting wider. At some point, fair or not, the standings become the only story anyone remembers. The next answer comes quickly. Barcelona is days away, a real circuit, a proper test, the kind of track where traffic and pit lane technicalities cannot hide the truth of who is quicker. If Russell turns up and beats Antonelli there, cleanly, this entire narrative starts to dissolve. If he does not, then the questions stop being about bad luck, and they start being about him.